"What the hell is this?" he exploded furiously and Scottishly. This, being the main console room, had a bizarre appearance, at least to anyone familiar with it. And yet it was also somehow familiar, to anyone bizarre enough to know it. It still sported a two-tier design. Gantry at a higher level, where the main doors lay, with stairs leading down from there to the central area of the previously mentioned console. But this was where the similarity with the Doctor's most recent recollections ended abruptly. The first problem the Doctor was having was just how bright everything was. Every wall, stair and banister was a brilliant and unforgiving white. Each wall was decorated with sunken circular roundels, an aesthetic he was obviously familiar with, but not for a very long time, and not on such a scale. The main console itself was a similar mind-bending contortion of old and new in a sickening collision of style and size. Its proportions were of the imposing, looming vastness with which he was familiar, but the panels and switches were of a much flatter, less baroque, more brutalist nature. The slowly pumping central column, while vast, now had what appeared to be flat perspex sides, encasing strange rods and plates of metal and glass. It was reminiscent of some terribly hip and groovy modern art installation set into undulating motion. It was from behind the imposing bulk of the main console assembly that the figure of a white-haired, elderly gentleman moved into view. "This," the First Doctor began with an air of weary patience, "is your TARDIS." "Is it?" the Doctor snapped back, gesturing around him. "Are you sure?" "Yes, well, I shall always think of it as mine, naturally, but yes, this is the TARDIS contemporaneous with you. My TARDIS is nearby. I understand your confusion, though. I do hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of redecorating a little. It was all so dark, baroque, and, well, unnecessary. However, I left the layout and dimensions set in accordance with your current grandiose fetishes." "I'm still Scottish! And a man!" "Are you Scottish? I don't recall ever being that good with accents. I must say that in the somewhat limited interactions we have had, you always sounded to me a little like that incarnation of ours with the floppy hat and the ridiculous scarf." "Nonsense! I've never sounded like that." "That is an absurd statement, not worthy of us. And of course we resemble a human. But if you'd care to check your pulse, I think you'll find yourself quite Time Lord." "I thought I regenerated into a woman." "Ha! How ludicrous." "Ludicrous? What reason would you have to say that?" "Reasons, you say? Oh, let me count the ways. Firstly, I do not recall ever harbouring a desire to be anything other than who I am, sex-wise, I mean. Never once caught myself wishing Susan could call me grandmother, nor even for a moment experienced the desire to learn the art of sucking eggs. I know we change from regeneration to regeneration, but there is a certain core which remains, no matter how far you may wish to run from it, to run from yourself. Secondly, have you any idea how difficult it would be to achieve such a sex change?" "Well, the sheer number and complexity of treatments prior to transition would be highly disruptive to the business of everyday life. It would be time-consuming, requiring many resources, and would be difficult to conceal from others if someone were to conceal both the desire and the process of such a transformation. Not only would the transformation be a little unusual, but to conceal it would put it into a whole new category of oddity. Imagine, say, if some high-ranking official on Gallifrey had been conducting pre-transition procedures in secret for their own peculiar reasons. What if they were then struck down in the course of their duties and regenerated in front of some hapless palace guard? Can you imagine the confusion and bewilderment on the face of this poor guard, utterly unprepared for this most atypical and difficult of regenerations? He would be completely thrown by it." "That's an awfully specific example." "Is it? I'm sure it's purely hypothetical." The central column began to rise and fall more quickly, lights flashing within, but before it had even completed one cycle, there was a crash and an ear-shredding screech as metal rending upon metal. One view screen showed an image which only a Time Lord could easily interpret. The universe had shattered. Instead of one space-time, the universe was in shards, sections of space and time broken asunder, and while still close, slowly and surely drifting apart. A communication screen now struggled hazily to life. Barely discernible through the snowstorm of static, the First Doctor's face swam into view. He was only able to utter one sentence before the connection was lost forever. "My dear Doctor, did you leave something undone?" Then the 12th Doctor was utterly alone in his TARDIS, adrift in a splinter of space and time. The End. The Doctor, Season 12. Written by Alexander Leiths. Edited by Ella Dimitru. Narrated by Alexander Leiths. With additional parts by Ella Dimitru.